for heaven's sake. Right? Oh, thank you, sir. Beautiful. So we've been talking about wholeness this month, the monthly theme. And this journey to heaven is a vehicle to wholeness, I think. And so I was thinking, right, that's when this came to me. I said, for heaven's sake, what shall I call that week's title? Ta-da! You know, there's a lot of heaven in our lives. There's a lot of heaven in the English language. I was thinking about all the heavens that are in the English language and how do I relate all these heavens to you, and it dawned on me that the most wonderful way. I mean, see, when I moved to Austin, Texas many years ago, it starts out really, I was really young. Here, tangent. My dad used to make, see, the reason I'm in so much into ice cream is that my dad used to make a milkshake with the Osterizer blender. Remember the Osterizer blender, right? And there was never, he never got it quite right, but I realized later it was on purpose. He was trying to get us addicted. My dad's an ice cream pusher. And so he would make a milkshake every night, but then there would be a little bit left over, 2 little cups left over. Steve, Michael, and we come running. We were like just, Pavlovian. We'd hear the Osterizer, we got all ready, and there were our little ice creams, and that's where the ice cream began. That's where my ice cream addiction began. Hello, my name is Steven. I'm addicted to ice cream. Hello, Stephen. So I moved to Austin, Texas, and I'd heard about this stuff called Bluebell. Anybody know about Bluebell ice cream? Oh my God, right? Woo, talk about a match made in heaven. Homemade Bluebell vanilla ice cream. It was perfect. In fact, the first time I tasted it, I thought I had just died and gone to heaven. My first taste of it. And then I moved to Los Angeles and I discovered they didn't have Bluebell in Los Angeles, but I was still going back and forth to Austin because my dog was still in Austin, so I was going back to visit him until I could bring him to LA because I didn't have a place to have the dog in LA. And so I would move heaven and earth. I would move heaven and earth to get this Bluebell ice cream back to LA because I would go to the factory where they delivered it to the city, and I'd get the hard packed, and I'd pack it in dry ice, and I'd wrap it up really tight because the fumes couldn't get out. I put it in plastic, and I'd ship that onto the plane with me, and I'd bring back Bluebell to LA. And it was just, and it was like, it was to be in heaven for me to get the perfect ratio of milk to ice cream so that I could get with the hard frozen and just And heaven only knows what would happen if I walked to the refrigerator and there was no milk. I was like, what? No milk? Oh my God, what's going to happen now? Heaven forbid I go to the store and it'd be closed. That was not going to work out. And then on one of my trips back to Austin, a friend of mine said, I got to go do a story in College Station. You want to go with me? And I was like, sure, I'd love to go with you, Rick. I'd love to go with you. So we're driving up to College Station, Texas, and he takes an exit off the highway. Oh, my God, heaven on earth. He took me to the Bluebell factory on a tour. It was heavenly. They had a tasting room at the end. All the Bluebell you could taste. The guy said, don't you want to try something else? No, the vanilla's fine. Match made in heaven, died and gone to heaven, move heaven and earth. Heavenly, heaven forbid, heaven knows. And heaven help us. We got a lot of talk around heaven. And it comes from this old story about heaven being someplace out there, right? Someplace out there in the afterlife. We'll die and we'll go to heaven, this great place. But then, if you use spiritual logic and think about that, it kind of falls apart because the reason you would go to this heaven is that you would be rewarded for the things you would do in life. Like no one would know that you did that stuff until you got to go to heaven. But if there's an omnipotent God, they already know what you've done and what you haven't done. So why do you have to wait to go to heaven to get the reward? Why can't you get the reward here for doing the things you're supposed to do? This doesn't make sense to me. I was like, this spiritually does not work out. I don't get it. And then it just really comes down to what we really need to do is to practice love. If we're practicing love in every way we go, then we're already being rewarded. Isn't that enough? Isn't love enough of its own reward? Charles Hartshorne, this wonderful philosopher, says this about it. He says, unless being loving is its own reward, it's not really loving at all. So in the end, do we need to go to some afterlife place to get the gift and the reward for being good in our lives, for being loving in our lives? Maybe not. And that's when we get to the new thought, the new story. The new thought story about heaven is that heaven is within, that heaven is a state of consciousness, that heaven is that place in which we live and move and have our being. I've told you the heaven and hell story before, right? About when they do the metaphorical, the parable type story about what it's all around and explaining this state of consciousness, where you go into the room and it's this beautiful banquet room with every kind of delicacy that you would want. I mean, they got all the food that anybody could ever want to eat, but everybody in the room is like tied up with their arms, and they got these extra long forks on, and they can't get the food into their mouths, you know, and the people are like just pissed off. They're like, there's all this great food and I can't eat it, you know. And then they go into another room, and you look in that room, and it's the same deal. The arms and everything, and the food's everywhere, but everybody's smiling because people are feeding each other. See, those people are in heaven, and these people were in hell because it's a state of consciousness. You know, it's so neat that you're here, because back in the day when I would go to see Mazda, I didn't know anything about science of mind yet. I hadn't gotten to that space. The seed was already planted within me. I was practicing the principles of science of mind, but I was still living a life pretty much of a lot of judgment, particularly judgment around people who had a spiritual life. And I didn't realize really what it was, right? But what it was just envy. It was like, ooh, they got something that I want, and I don't know how to get it. And a friend of mine's sister was one of those that really helped me understand this. Her name was Carla. Name has been changed to protect the innocent in case she's watching online. Or her brother, Mark. That's his name, really. So Carla decides to change her name to Heaven. She'd had a mystical experience. So she decided she'd be Heaven from now on. And I went into my serious judgment mode. It was not about discernment. It was about judgment. You know, I've known you for 20 years. I'm not going to call you Carla. Your name is Carla. I'm not going to call you Heaven. What are you talking about? So every time I tried, I did try, but I would forget. And she was so into being this new person that she would get really angry. Like, I had that experience when I got my minister's license. For some reason, something said, be Stephen. I kind of owe it to Roscoe Lee Brown, who always said, he always called me Stephen. And I'd say, it's Steve. He says, no, what did your mother name you? It's Stephen, then it's Stephen. And I was like, oh, okay, I get that, but I never went for it. But then when I got my minister's license, something happened in my head, and I kind of like, I think I am Reverend Stephen. I don't want to be Reverend Steve. I'm Stephen. And I had that shift. I had the Heaven Carla shift. But at the time, I wasn't down for it, right? And so I would see her, and I'd say Carla, and she'd say, it's Heaven. And she would get so upset by that I would go like, oh, for Carla's sake, for the love of Carlin, Carla forbid, you know? And she would just get, I'm sorry. I now understand. I get it. Carla, Heaven, I'm now Reverend Stephen. Dr. Holmes says, we believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. It's in our Declaration of Principles called What We Believe. It says we believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. That's our journey. That's our joy. That's our possibility. That's our choice. To choose, do we feed the other? Or do we suffer because we can't get what we want, because we're trying to do it all ourselves without understanding that we're in this whole experience called life and that we actually do have to depend on other people? Has anybody done anything today completely by themselves? If you have, tell me how you did it, because I don't get it. From the moment you woke up, in fact, before you even got up, you didn't make your sheets, did you? You didn't make your bed, did you? Well, maybe you made your bed after you got out of it. Hopefully. It's a good thing to do. It's nice to get back into a nice made bed at the end of the day. Could be that I'm anal, but I like it that way. But the deal is to see the good in everything, to see the good in opportunities, to see the good in those things that we don't necessarily see the good in. Meister Eckhart has a very interesting phrase, and he's incredible. I don't want to challenge anything he said. He's a philosopher, a theologian, a mystic, and he lived a long time ago when he didn't have Facebook and YouTube, and so he spent a lot of time thinking. So I think he was a pretty smart guy. And what he said was, we rarely find people who achieve great things without first going astray. What? Right. You know? We're going to screw up along the way. That's okay. But in our journey to wholeness, we must see the good in all of that, and we must try to experience heaven in even those moments when we think, gosh, I missed the boat again. But we don't have to worry about that, because you know what? There's another boat. It's called a change of thought. We can change our thought and go back into a heaven experience every time we have one of those hellacious experiences. And we will have them. I know. I have them all the time. I hope you have them too, because I don't want to be by myself. But along the process of experiencing this change, we continue to grow. We become the people who achieve great things. And we achieve those great things as a result of sometimes going somewhat astray. In Living the Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes says, no matter how small our concept of heaven may be to begin with, it has the possibility of eternal unfoldment. That's the grace. That's the grace of life. We may start out thinking, oh, this is just sort of okay. This could be better. That's right, it could be better. And how does it begin to get better? It begins to get better as we enlarge our concept of what life is all about, as we start to open ourselves up to the experience of living in wholeness, as we begin to understand that everything is here for us, waiting for our acceptance of it, and in the acceptance of it, we apply these spiritual laws and we bring it into our life. See, we must see it, and that thou beest. We must see it first. And having this consciousness of heaven, having this consciousness of understanding that where I put my thoughts allows me to feel a sense of peace and joy in my life, and that experience can eternally unfold and continue to grow on a regular basis. Let me get that out of my face here. Now, to get that experience, though, means that sometimes we just have to notice. And I always like to think of notice with the word know, K-N-O-W, tis. Notice what's happening in our lives. Notice in those moments of misery or suffering or pain. Costa led us in a great experience in the board meeting this week where we had one word. The word was suffering. What is the first word you think about when you think about the word suffering? Pain. A lot of people went to pain. And the next word, then he gives us 30 seconds to think of the next word that goes after that. And so frequently the word after that was opportunity. The suffering, the pain gives us an opportunity. The misery in our lives gives us an opportunity. The moments where we get, darn, missed it again, did something wrong. Gosh, I wish I hadn't done that. That's great. You know what? The wish has been granted. You can do it over again. You can change it, and you can do it by practicing the spiritual laws, by getting out of the ignorance of those laws and understanding that we have these practices, these laws that we can practice on a regular basis that bring a better life for us. And it begins by understanding that there is an inner kingdom. There's a treasure hidden within each and every one of us. And as we get to that treasure, I'm talking about the heaven that resides within. I'm talking about the sharing with each other, knowing that there's a higher consciousness, a higher wisdom available to each and every one of us. As we get to that treasure and discover it, that discovery of the treasure within, that discovery of the heaven within us equals joy, and it equals satisfaction in our lives. But it requires a process. And that process is to get still. That's why we do the 3 minutes each week. It's to get still for a minute, to be in reflection around our lives, to do a self-assessment, to do an inventory, as they say in some circles, and then to contemplate how we can do it differently if we want to. If we don't feel like we're in that hell experience, which I always think about, and actually I used Reverend Betsy this week to describe heaven and hell. You know, hell is you leave late for an assignment, you're going somewhere, and you get on the 405, and you know you should have gotten on the freeway 25 minutes earlier, and it's backed up bumper to bumper, and your CD player is jammed, and your air conditioner's not working because you didn't put any Freon in it, and you were just really having a miserable experience. You were living in hell, and you look over to the right of you, and there's Betsy and Elaine in their brand new car with their Flex Fusion drive and the great CD running, and they're just like, ah, in heaven. We get there, we can get there just that easy. You can be cruising in your new car, or you can just be fretting because you're late. We can do that And if we do the reflection and the contemplation of what put us in one space or the other space, we can magnify the good time and we can move away from the bad time. We can realize that I should have left 30 minutes earlier, next time I will, and I should probably go buy AutoZone and get some Freon for my car, right? And get a new CD player, or at least Spotify and earbuds for my phone. These are the ways we can do it. It's just that simple. You take what you've done, you look at it, and you flip it. Living a life of negativity, what's the opposite? Positivity. I now live a life of positivity. That flip right there is the journey into heaven, into wholeness, into the experience. And it starts with just getting quiet. Meister Eckhart again says, nothing in all creation is so like God as stillness. Wow. How sweet the still moment. This morning, before the sun, just as the sun was coming up, I heard the little drip, 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 drip of the raindrops, but they weren't falling fast. There was this space in between each one. And then we went outside because we forgot to cover the chairs. And there was this stillness in the yard, and this pleasure of the wetness nourishing the universe. And it only happened because I just stopped for just a minute, even in the rush of, I don't want the chairs to get wet. I just stopped for a minute and felt that stillness. And I got touched early in the morning by the hand of God. That's our opportunity each and every day, to experience the oneness, to step into the wholeness of life itself. I was reading from the new Mark Nepo book, which we have in our bookstore right around the corner. And he was saying, when one with what we see, hear, and feel, when we're one, I'm talking about just completely immersed in it, with everything you see, you feel, you hear, you just like this morning with that rain shower, we enter into the secret kingdom of aliveness that is only secret when we remain separate. You can choose to keep the secret, but you got to be separate from everything else that makes life wonderful. Or you can choose to join into the secret, to become one with it, and get that feeling of aliveness moving from the center of your core into your being. And this is not just a Mark Nepo One Life We're Given idea. This is not just a Meister Eckhart idea. It's not a Christian idea, an Islamic idea, because they celebrate stillness in the peace of the Quran. It's in so many different faith systems. Check this out. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, "He who is happy within, rejoices that within, is illumined within, becomes eternal." If you're within, if you go in to this space that we're talking about, a light comes on and you live in this eternal place, and it doesn't stop there. It goes on in the Tao. I love the way the Tao does stuff. It's like, take the days away and there will be no year. Sit with that. Huh? Right? How do you get a year? A whole bunch of days. Without what is internal, there will be nothing external. As we get to understand what is within us, everything outside of us becomes richer, a more full experience. It becomes the year. It becomes the whole thing. But it starts with what we get inside of us. Tangent. The day's away and there will be no year. There used to be a sign out down in front of LAX. They were building this thing next to LAX, and it said, it's a big billboard in the construction site. It said, what do you call a lot of spaces? A lot. Isn't that sweet? Right? Now it's a big old parking lot right next to LAX. I love that. So I thought about, take the parking spaces away, and there will be no lot. And in the Upanishads, again, another Buddhist text, another Hindu text. As far as mind extends, so far heaven extends. This breadth, the scope, the length of your heaven experience is contained within the power of your own mind. Heaven is as big as you choose it to be. Kind of like God. It's as big as you choose it to be. If your problems are not working out smoothly and being solved in the ways that you want, it's real simple. Fire the God you've got and get a bigger God. God's available for that. It doesn't mind being fired. It will just go like, oh, he wants my God point 3. No problem. I'm here. It shows up as you believe. For heaven's sake, give it a try. It'll work for you. And so it is. So now, this time when we do the affirmation, there's a question. So look at somebody and ask of them the question. Here we go. Each and every day, I make a sweet choice to live in the consciousness of heaven. Care to join me? Care to join me? Anybody care to join me? Care to join me? Yes. All right. It's prayer time. I'll take it. Thank you, Maggie Betsy. You like this, so now you can see it. You may think that I make a lot of jokes around prayer because I don't take it seriously. That's not it at all. God loves humor. The humor, it lightens everything up. And light, when you bring light into a situation, you have brought God into a situation. And sometimes, we look at our prayers, we look at the things that are worried us, and we go like, oh, and then God's like, got to go through all of that stuff to get to the joy of bringing you your wants and your needs and your desires. But if you go to the, that's like, open it up, bring it in joy, because you know what? Whatever is in this box right now, I just know that light is shining on it and a joyous experience is unfolding from it. Let's know that for each and every person here, and whatever your situation is. Let's start with the light. Take a nice big smile and put it on your face. Yes, Lord, I'm ready. Make this demand upon you right now. The Spirit that lives within me, that is everywhere present, is God itself. And I know that each and every one of us here has just made the call, has opened our veil of separation, and has joined you in the consciousness of heaven. And so it is from this place that we know a divine law that flows from your being, that is activated by the love in our hearts, is now moving through whatever situation we have brought to mind in this moment. Be it a situation of lack or limitation, some kind of disagreement, disharmony, some kind of feeling of unworthiness. We know these exist in the world, but they don't have to. And the reason we know they don't have to is because we know that you, Spirit, are in the world, and you are in each and every one of us. You have branded us with your nature. And so we allow that loving nature to come forth right now, and to outpicture as harmony and right action, to outpicture as divine givingness and prosperity and abundance, to show up as possibilities becoming realized, as a magnified life that jumps up into a joyous experience of living for each and every person, each and every entity, be it a flower looking up at the sun or a mole digging in the hole. It's all God showing up in these wonderful ways to bring joy and satisfaction to each and every one of its creations. This is the truth of life itself. And this is how we all live in the consciousness of heaven. So right now, I affirm this truth for each and every one of us. I stand in a deep conviction and with so much gratitude that it's overflowing in this time of thanksgiving. I speak a word for all those this week who are thinking that they may not have, and I know that they do have, from the loving gifts of all those that have more than enough to share. We help our fellow man. We help our fellow woman. We help our fellow children. We lift up the world through our love, expressed as the joy of giving in this season of gratitude. For this and for so much more, I say thank you, Father God. Thank you, Divine Presence. Thank you, Infinite Spirit, for the gift of your love and self-givingness to the world. I release this prayer now into a perfect law by saying, and so it is. All right.